Angela Davis. They asked me if we're going to pack the spot tonight. I think we have a pretty good turnout. Just before we get started with the program, I just would like to acknowledge the founding director of Africana Studies, William R. Scott, who is here with us. Established our program. He hired me, and he retired this year. So thank you for coming out tonight. I am honored to be here this evening with you, Professor Davis, with you, Nas. I've seen you at different conferences, different places before, but just first of all, I want to thank you both for joining us here for this conversation this evening. Thank you so much.
This is my second time.
This is your second time.
The last. I was here on January 16th.
And the weather just wiped us
The
out.
university shut down.
Yes. We have a lot better weather today. So we're going to do a couple things. We have a short time to talk amongst ourselves, and then we're going to open this up and take some questions. Obviously, the topic of the day is mass incarceration in the prison industrial complex. And I should just say right from the top that you may see me use those terms interchangeably, but I probably should, right? Mass incarceration is the practice of incarcerating large amounts of American citizens here, mostly people of color, mostly poor folk, people who have substance abuse challenges, et cetera, et cetera. And the prison industrial complex is actually the entity that conducts mass incarceration. And so it's a partnership between our government and private corporations that incentivize some private institutions and some government facilities to incarcerate more and more people. So although I'll use them interchangeably, we probably should at least make a distinction from the start. Both of you are familiar with the data, almost 2 billion people incarcerated. You can put about 4 or 5 cities together, and that might equal the number of Americans that we incarcerate on a regular basis. The system continues to grow. Somewhere between 50 and 75,000 people are incarcerated every year. Like I said earlier, most of those folk are people with substance abuse problems. About 70% of them are illiterate. Almost all of them are poor. The recidivism rate, the rate at which people return to the system once they get out, in some places as high as 2/3. When we look at that total population number, some 40% are black and brown folk. Professor Davis might disagree, maybe higher than that.
Well, if you include jails, then the number is closer to 2.5 million.
Right.
And you have
Percentages.
disproportionately large number of people of color in jails.
So those are the, that's the data, and that is what we're here to talk about tonight. One of the things that's interesting to me about both of your works, and I'd like for both of you to respond to this, is there are a lot of folk now who acknowledge that this is one of the great civil rights challenges that we're faced with. There are a lot of people who talk about it. We've seen stories about it. Michelle Alexander has a new Jim Crow, which is one of these groundbreaking books. But Nas, both in your work from the very beginning, and Professor Davis, in your work from the very beginning, you were both talking about prison systems and their impact on certain communities. And so I just wanted to start off, how do you see the issue now? As someone who's been talking about it in the music for 20 plus years, someone who's been at the front lines as a revolutionary activist. By the way, we're here tonight with arguably the greatest activist of the 20th century. What you do for a long time, how do you see some of this stuff now?
Nas begin? Because his arc is somewhat shorter than mine.
First of all, it's an honor to be sitting here with you because you're my hero. Jim? Yeah, so we grew up in a war, and we just grew up knowing that we have limited time to get it all. For some reason, we feel like, whether it was whatever the hustle was, you had to get it right now. I don't know what it was, but all of us, since we were kids, felt like it was on. There was a war on, and no one really told us what the war. We would hear little pieces of stuff like, watch out for this and stay away, don't talk to strangers, and when you go to school, don't. But there was something more out there that was eating at us, and that was just haunting us like. And we didn't, and then slowly we start seeing how the cop cars would drive by slower and slower. And then we see it and focusing on us. And we were young, but they still were focused on us in a way that something like what's going on. So, and then we see like the dope fiends nodding off. I'm a little older, so this was the 80s, and a lot of dope fiends, people coming from the war, the 70s and stuff like that, and then heroin had the streets tore up. So people was leaning, and I'm watching dope fiends leaning, and I'm like, what happened to them? And I'm like, I'm in school, and between me and the teacher, I'm like, what's going on with me and the slave? You know what I'm saying? And I'm just starting to feel like there's a war. And then as you grow older, you start seeing your man's older brother get locked up. What the cops want him for? And you start noticing more and more, and you start to notice your neighborhood. You start to notice the situation most of your neighbors are in. Then you start to notice the trap. And then you realize, am I going to sink or swim? Am I going to be broke? How am I going to eat? And you go after it. But it seems like whether you dabble into the street life or not, if you live there, you're just as guilty. You know what I'm saying? As the one you're standing next to. And then the one you're standing next to, if he's had a worse life than yours, like some of my friends' parents was on dope or whatever, and if they had a worse life than yours, they were more anxious to go and feed themselves out there, right? So, and that meant they were in a more dangerous lifestyle than me, and that might have meant they didn't like me because I had a little better. So now I have to realize who's my friend and who's not my friend. So now the war becomes a different level. Now it's not just the cops, or it's not even the cops yet, it's my boys. And then it's the cops. So now as soon as you open your doorknob, am I going too long?
No one's going to interrupt you, bro. but listen, you're listing out a lot of institutions. You had school, you had criminal justice system, you talk about neighborhoods, but one of the important pieces that we want to talk about is the drug piece. So, I mean, the war on drugs obviously is directly connected to mass incarceration, but can you give us the kind of how you saw it as a young man? The war on drugs piece and people end up more often than not in the prison system.
Well, I saw my friends' fathers accept hustling as an occupation rather than go to work. Maybe they were skilled, but they were only allowed to go so high in the workplace in the 80s. I don't know what it was, but I saw some of my friends' fathers. My friends' fathers doing anything. And then I was like, damn, their father's doing it? And I'm like, that's cool. I want that. I'm like, so you can hang out as long as you want? Like, Mom, I can't hang out all night. But I'm getting the real love, and he's getting a broken household love. He's not really getting the love that he deserved that I'm getting. So I'm wanting the freedom that he has, but he wants the stability that I have. And then we have this thing going on. So, but you couldn't escape it. For some reason, there was a large amount of drugs in poor neighborhoods. There's a large amount of guns in the neighborhood. And it's almost like you can't avoid getting in this trap. So even if you're not all the way in it, and your boys are in it, and you guys are standing on one corner, the cops, you are a crew. So what are you going to do? Avoid your boys? You're going to be weirdo? You're not going to hang out with the boys? You're going to hang with the boys, and you have to deal with the same stuff that they're dealing with. And, you know, it was rough. It was really rough for me seeing my friends, families torn apart by drugs. And then therefore, later on, then they wound up in jail. And one by one, all my crews wound up in jail. And so that's how the prison thing affected
Sure,
me.
sure. Professor Davis, you had a chance to see the prison system become the prison industrial complex, really on the front lines of the 3-year activism. So, kind of wonder if you could share with how the long arc of your career, how you see the issue now.
Well, first of all, let me say that it's a real honor to be here with you too. Because I understand that it's through culture that most people develop politically and develop their consciousness. And so thank you, for your work over the last 20 years. Now, yeah, it seems as if I've been addressing issues of imprisonment, the prison industrial complex, practically all of my life. I never would have predicted that this was going to be the case, but my first contact with the issue of imprisonment came as a result of working to free political prisoners. And this was back in the 1960s. Working to free political prisoners in places like South Africa, Nelson Mandela, of course, working to free the Puerto Rican political prisoners, Luis de